All right, Talk Tickers listeners. Today, we are going to do a deep dive into Gareon's Q3 2024 earnings call.
Sounds good.
Yeah, you sent over a bunch of stuff here. The call transcripts, some stock performance charts, a couple news articles.
Yep.
So let's break it down.
Yeah.
Big picture. This is their first earnings call since they launched Rightello,
Right.
their new drug for lower risk MDS.
Yeah.
So we want to understand how that launch is going,
Of course.
get a handle on these big financing deals they just announced, and see what's cooking in their clinical trials.
Yeah, and I think what's fascinating here is that this launch is about more than just Gareon, right? This is the arrival of the first-in-class telomerase inhibitor on the market.
Right.
This is a potential game changer in how we treat certain cancers.
Absolutely. Okay, so zooming in on that launch,
Yep.
they reported $28.2 million in revenue for Q3. Not bad for a brand new drug.
Not bad at all.
Especially.
That actually exceeded their projections.
Oh, wow.
Remember, this was their first full quarter of sales.
Right.
They launched in June.
Okay.
So what this tells me is that there was pent-up demand
Interesting.
from both physicians and patients.
Okay.
It seems they've really tapped into a significant unmet need in the lower risk MDS market.
And you know what else caught my eye? They've already got payer coverage for like 70% of insured lives in the U.S.
Huge.
Just huge.
Yeah, especially this early in the game.
Yeah.
That kind of payer buy-in right out of the gate
Yeah.
is a massive vote of confidence. It suggests that insurers recognize the value of Rightello.
Right.
They're willing to cover it, which will obviously drive adoption.
Of course. But then they go on to say, like, hey, don't read too much into those weekly Rightello sales figures from third-party data.
Yeah.
I mean, as an investor, that's the kind of data I'm glued to.
It's understandable that you would be looking at that, but they make a valid point.
Okay.
It's still incredibly early in the launch. Those third-party data sources often have gaps.
Right.
Week-to-week fluctuations are normal. They're essentially saying, hey, we see those numbers too, but trust us, we're seeing strong, consistent growth across all patient segments.
Okay.
Yeah.
They do seem pretty confident about their internal data,
Yeah.
especially the feedback from their sales team. Speaking of confidence, let's talk about this massive financing move.
Okay.
$250 million.
Wow.
Half from a royalty deal with Royalty Pharma,
Right.
half from debt financing through Pharmacon Advisors.
Interesting.
They want to just do a stock offering.
Well, this was clearly a strategic decision.
Okay.
Remember, their stock is doing quite well right now,
Yeah.
but they seem determined to avoid diluting shares.
Interesting.
The royalty deal in particular is structured in a way that gives them a lot of flexibility.
Like what?
No maturity date, no mandatory payments, and a capped royalty payment.
Wow.
It minimizes their financial risk while giving them the capital they need.
It does make you wonder, though, if they're that confident about Rightello's long-term prospects.
Yeah.
Why not leverage the stock's performance for a quick capital infusion?
It's a gamble either way.
True. Yeah.
They're betting that Rightello's success, along with the potential of their pipeline, will ultimately justify this approach.
Okay.
They're aiming for profitability without further stock dilution,
Right.
which is an ambitious goal,
For sure.
but not impossible if they execute well.
All right, well, let's shift gears and talk about those clinical trials.
Oh, okay.
Their Impact MF phase 3 trial for Imetalstat in relapsed refractory myelofibrosis. That's making good progress. About 70% enrolled already, with interim analysis expected early 2026.
This trial is really important because it's the first in myelofibrosis to use overall survival as the primary endpoint.
Okay.
Most trials focus on things like, how much the tumor shrinks,
Right.
or how long until the disease progresses.
Right.
But overall survival,
Yeah.
that's the gold standard.
Okay.
They're looking at whether the drug actually helps people live longer,
Right.
not just live with the disease for a bit longer.
High stakes then.
Yeah,
No pressure, Gareon.
no pressure at all.
And speaking of high stakes, they present some pretty intriguing data at the recent ASH conference. I'm talking about Imetalstat potentially benefiting a wider range of lower risk MDS patients.
Right.
And even being used in combination with other drugs.
Those ASH abstracts were definitely interesting. It's still early stage research.
Yeah.
But they point to the potential of the Imetalstat beyond its current indication. If those findings pan out, we could be looking at a much larger addressable market for the drug.
Okay, so they've got a successful launch.
Yep.
They've secured a ton of capital. And they've got some promising clinical trials in the works.
Yeah.
They say they have enough cash to fund operations for at least the next 12 months.
Yeah.
But can they really achieve profitability without raising more capital?
Right.
And what does this all mean for investors like you listening out there?
Those are the million-dollar questions. And that's what we're here to unpack. Stick with us, because in our This Is Not Financial Advice segment, we're going to cook up a speculative, maybe even a little crazy trade idea based on everything we've learned.
I like it.
All right, Talk Tickers faithful, buckle up, because it's time for This Is Not Financial Advice,
Here we go.
where we take everything we've learned and spin it into a wild speculative trade idea.
Love it.
Remember, this is purely hypothetical. We're not telling you to buy or sell anything.
Right. This is where we put on our tinfoil hats and let our imaginations run wild.
Exactly. But even in our wildest speculations, we're looking for those kernels of truth, those overlooked angles that could potentially lead to outsized gains.
Right. So with Gareon, their big ambition is to achieve profitability without further stock dilution. That got me thinking.
Yeah.
What if we don't bet directly on Gareon's stock? What if we look for companies that stand to benefit indirectly from their success?
Now you're talking my language.
Okay.
We're looking for those under-the-radar players, the companies that are quietly supplying Gareon with critical components or services.
I like it. Think about it. Gareon can't do everything themselves. They need partners for manufacturing, distribution, clinical trial logistics, you name it.
Right.
As Rightello's sales climb, those partners are going to see their business grow too.
And that's where the opportunity lies.
Okay.
We need to find those companies that have significant exposure to Gareon's success,
Right.
but are still small enough that the market hasn't fully priced it in.
So we're basically playing detective, right?
Yeah.
Digging through Gareon's SEC filings, scouring industry reports, looking for any hints of who these key partners might be.
Exactly. We're looking for whispers of long-term supply agreements, strategic alliances, anything that suggests a deep relationship between Gareon and another company.
And ideally, these companies are small, maybe even microcap, with stock prices that haven't yet caught up to the potential windfall coming their way.
Imagine you find this tiny company that makes a crucial component for Rightello. They're practically unknown, trading for pennies. But then, boom, Gareon's sales explode, and this little company suddenly becomes indispensable. Their stock goes parabolic.
Right.
We're talking 10 baggers, maybe even 100 baggers. Okay, I know this is all hypothetical.
I don't know, hypothetical, but fun to think.
Of course, this is not financial advice.
Of course.
But it does illustrate the power of thinking outside the box, of connecting those seemingly unrelated dots.
Yeah. So, listeners, if you're feeling adventurous, put on your detective hats, do your own research consult with a financial professional, and maybe you'll uncover the next hidden gem riding Gareon's coattails to success.
And with that dose of speculative fun, let's shift back to reality and wrap up our deep dive into Gareon's Q3 performance.
Okay, sounds good.
They're a company with a compelling story, a successful product, launch a strong financial position, and a promising pipeline. The question is, can they keep this momentum going?
Yeah, it is going to be fascinating to watch. If they can achieve profitability without further diluting their stock, they'll be a shining example of how a biotech company can transition from clinical stage to commercial success. And who knows, maybe along the way, they'll create some lucrative opportunities for those investors who are paying attention.
Always good to be paying attention.
Before we sign off, I want to circle back to Gareon's IMPACT-MF trial.
Okay.
For Imetalstat in relapsed refractory myelofibrosis.
Yes, their late-stage trial. You know what's interesting about this one?
What's that?
It's the first myelofibrosis trial to use overall survival as the primary endpoint.
Huh. That's a big deal. Break that down for me. Why is overall survival such a big deal as an endpoint?
Well, most trials in this space look at things like tumor shrinkage or progression-free survival.
Yeah.
Basically, how long until the disease gets worse.
Right.
But overall survival,
Yeah.
that's the ultimate measure of a drug's effectiveness.
Okay.
It means they're looking at whether Imetalstat actually helps patients live longer,
Right.
not just live with the disease for a bit longer.
So if Imetalstat shows a significant improvement in overall survival.
It would be a game changer. It would mean that Imetalstat could potentially become a first-line therapy for myelofibrosis, a much larger market than the lower-risk MDS indication for Rightello.
And that translates to?
A whole lot more revenue for Gareon.
Got it.
We're talking blockbuster potential here.
Interesting.
If the trial is successful.
But of course, we have to wait for the data.
Right.
The interim analysis isn't expected until early 2026.
Yeah.
With the final analysis in early 2027.
Patience is key in the biotech world,
For sure.
but that doesn't mean we can't speculate.
Right.
In the meantime, Gareon is full steam ahead with the Rightello launch
Okay.
and preparing for a potential launch in the EU if they get regulatory approval.
So they're not putting all their eggs in the Imetalstat basket.
Absolutely. Diversification is key in any portfolio,
Right.
even a biotech company's.
Yeah.
They've got Rightello generating revenue, a solid cash position, thanks to those recent financing deals,
Got it.
and this promising pipeline. It's a good place to be.
All right, Talk Tickers listeners, that wraps up our deep dive into Gareon's Q3 2024 earnings call.
Yep.
We covered a lot of ground today, from a successful product launch to ambitious financing strategies and exciting clinical developments.
Absolutely. We explored the potential, the risks, and even threw in a little speculative fun for good measure.
Of course.
Remember, though, this is not financial advice.
Right.
Do your own research, consult a financial professional, and make informed decisions.
Until next time, happy investing.